Here's a reminder of our top stories now. South Africans are mourning the death of legendary actor Joe Mafela, also known as Sdumo. A team of detectives is probing yesterday's burglary at the Chief Justice's office. And the ANC's biggest province wants 70% of land transferred to government. A higher education convention was forced to be postponed yesterday after students prevented Higher Education Minister Bladen Zimande from speaking. Sello Hatang from the Nelson Mandela Foundation joins us this morning. Thank you for joining us here on ENCA. You must be disappointed this morning after looking forward to 2 days of engagement with all stakeholders, and then nothing happened in the end.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Gustav. I think for us, it's not only sad that we had to postpone the convention. It's also sad how it was done. It's saying a lot about what we've become as a society. A society that resorts to violence. If we need to resolve anything, we just have to resort to violence, and we think we've achieved something. A society that believes that you can get into the room and not want to listen to your opponent. So the opposition must not say a word, because I guess your word is the final word, and no one else should speak. And I think that's where we are as South Africa. And I think until such time that we look back and say, how have we come here? How did we come here? What do we need to do to change where we are at the moment? And as the forum, we will be going back to the drawing board and saying, what do we need to do next? We believe we did everything we could to get this thing going. What
went wrong yesterday? Because former Deputy Chief Justice Dikgang Moseneke said that each line of the agenda was agreed upon before the conference started.
Precisely, and again, it says a lot about honor, that you agree on something, and the next thing you get into the meeting and there's disagreement. So the first point of disagreement around the speaking of the VCs was then conceded that was not agreed upon. So once that was conceded, we thought we could go ahead, and then the minister was an issue. And I think it says a lot about what we need to do as society, as I said. And we're hoping that those who disrupted with the hope that we won't go back will be disappointed, because we are committed to the process and will continue. And hopefully we will all be honorable enough to go back to the drawing board.
At what point yesterday did you realize that there is no hope for meaningful engagement? Because at some points you were trying to get it back on track.
Yeah, I think once you have a couple of your key stakeholders not only being disrupted, but that they are told they cannot speak, it loses the spirit that you had for the convention. The spirit of the convention was captured well by the former Deputy Chief Justice, who said that it was going to be a festival of ideas, that everybody would be listened to, and all of us had agreed that was going to be the format. And each one of them, and you might have seen that right at the beginning, after the first disruption, all the student leaders came forward and said, we're committing to having this process go ahead, and they got given 1 minute each to say, we're committing to this process going ahead, and all of us will be listening to each other. And now, once you say that, it tells you that we have gotten the thing back on track, and all of us are committing to listening to each other, but it was never to be.
What do you think is the reason that the students acted in the way that they did? Because a lot of them were not happy with the disruption as well.
Again, it's the minority who ended up doing that. And it starts with one thing that's said by maybe one of the students, and then it just led to the chaos. So we will be reviewing this as conveners. We'll be convened by Dikgang Moseneke pretty soon for us to review this and say, what do we need to do next? And just to remind the viewers that this was a long process. This started in September, October last year. We just didn't wake up last minute and say, we need to do this thing. So we went to provinces. We convened leaders in provinces. and all 9 provinces were consulted, and everybody was happy that we should go ahead. We went to government, also did the same thing. And you cannot have a situation where you don't want to resolve the thing because you don't want one of the key stakeholders. We as conveners concede that we are not the solution to the problem. The solution will come from government, will come from business, and it will come from students. So if these 3 cannot even sit in the same room, you can imagine how you're going to resolve this problem.
What are your hopes for the future? Because you remain committed to engaging, but how will you do it differently in future?
That's what we need to review. We haven't done the post-mortem of the whole thing to say what do we need to do differently and how do we get back on track. But I think it's a societal question that you're asking, Gustav. And I think all of us need to ask that question. How do we get back on track as society? South Africa Inc. needs to get back on track. What is it, where did we get off rail? And what do we need to do differently for us to get back on track? Some of the things that were most disturbing were how you had students speaking to elders the way they did. You know, the level of respect.
And the clergy.
Yeah, and the clergy too. So the level of respect that was expected, that it would be robust, that was never something that we were shying away from, that we wanted it to be robust. But the robustness needs to have a limit where you know language that needs to be used, that's appropriate, etc. And that was never there. So I think we need to now be saying as society, where have we gone wrong? Mm-hmm. What is it that we need to do differently? And it's not just something that we should leave just with the students. They might be seeing things that are happening also in Parliament and saying that's the way to go.
The clergy were sent in to calm them down, and it seems as though they were ignored. And do we have to accept maybe that society has changed so much that there is no respect in that sense?
I think that, again, it's something that we've been calling for, that we need to go back to the key values that establish this nation. What are those key values? One of them was respect. But also the key worrying thing is that we're breeding a young generation, a generation of people who are causing more hurt, who are being hurt also in the process. The trauma that's there needs to be healed. And I think the healing process that was expected in the Constitution is something that we need to go back to and say, how do we heal this nation? I think we did well as a democracy. We've done very well to get to where we are. But 22 years on, we must also concede that the students have said it can never be normal. You are normalizing a very abnormal situation where the very things that happened to people like Nelson Mandela, who had to be excluded from university because he didn't have money to pay and he had failed academically. And I think they're saying you cannot have that having happened to Madiba in the 50s, that it should happen again in 2017. It's not acceptable. And I think that that healing process needs to say, where have we been as a society? How do we reimagine ourselves into a society that we want to be, to build South Africa of our dreams?
Okay, just last, before we go this morning, your reaction to the death of Joe Mafela this morning?
I think this is the saddest moment in South Africa's history and in the entertainment industry. And to the family of Ntate Joe Mafela, we're saying our condolences to you, but your loss is not only for you, it's for the whole of South Africa. This is a man who became part of our nation, that he was in our dining rooms every night, in our bedrooms in every other night. And to have lost him is something that's really deep for our society. But I think it's also important as we think of Ntate Joe Mafela that this was one of the happiest human beings alive. Mm-hmm. And I think if we remember him, we shouldn't remember him with sadness. We should remember him with that happy man that he was, that we say in his memory, may the entertainment industry become what he wanted it to be, one that cares about those who act in it, one that wants people to thrive in it, that people shouldn't die poor while they're practicing the craft that they believe in. And I think the most important thing with this kind of man, with this kind of death is, what do we need to do to ensure that our artists never die poor? What do we need to do to ensure that our artists thrive and groom others who are coming up to become those who are responsible? And I remember I have one memory of him being an MC at one of the events at the Union Buildings. It could have been even the inauguration of Ntate Nelson Mandela. And he saw young people climbing trees and he said, "Are you monkeys now? that you're climbing trees, and because of the humor that was there, people didn't take any offense to that and got off the tree. And the respect that was there for the man was just unbelievable, because he also respected others. So in his memory, may we build a nation that can be that respectful.
Thank you so much for that, and thanks for joining us this morning. That was the CEO of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, Sello Hatang. Now, let's close our bulletin at this point with a listen to Joe Mafela's hit song, Shebeleza.